Well, good morning. Thanks for being here with us this morning. We are doing things a little bit different, as you know, with the outdoor service going on, but we are really glad that you've made the effort to join us online. My name is Matt, and with that, let's just jump right in. I really like the fact that in the Gospels, Jesus often encounters people who are just a little bit guarded. I mean, they're not sure about him, not sure if he has anything worthwhile to offer them. Like, who is this guy? I mean, there are even stories where people just walk away from Jesus. Like, they're not quite ready to make the leap that he's inviting them to make. And I'm glad that we have accounts like this because honestly, that's where some of us are right now. I mean, maybe we'd say, for some of us, Jesus seems like a neat guy or there's some compelling things about him, but I'm just not ready to follow him. To make him Lord or King of my life. Or others would say, you know what, nothing against him, but I'm good. Like, without Jesus, life sort of is working out fine for me at the moment. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus keeps meeting like skeptical, guarded people just like you and me in surprising and unexpected ways. Like, Jesus finds a way to become very, very real to people who maybe aren't even looking for him. Now, that doesn't mean he tries to control people or to get them to accept what he's claiming to offer. As I said, some walk away. I mean, Jesus' approach is 100% manipulation free. It's purely invitational. It's like, up to you, up to me. And I just find that really refreshing. So today I want to look at an encounter that Jesus has with one individual. And here's my prayer, that something perhaps even unexpected would happen to us, that we would have the sense that Jesus wants to meet us wherever we are as we are. And so my prayer is that you would have a personal encounter with Jesus today. So if you have a Bible, please turn with me to John chapter 4. We're going to look at a very, very familiar story. Many of us know it. It's a famous story. If you turn there or pull it up, the heading on some of our Bibles says, Jesus talks with a Samaritan woman. Others say the woman at the well. And for those of us who've heard this many times, like, I know this, I know where it's heading, I know what happens, the tendency, and myself included, is to kind of run ahead mentally to the ending, instead of really putting ourselves in this woman's shoes. And so if we're going to figure out what does this story, what does Jesus' encounter with this woman have to do with me, and how might I have a personal encounter with Jesus in this story, that's going to require that we slow way down and that we really try to experience this story from the inside. So John chapter 4, starting in verse 3. So he, Jesus, left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. I'll show you on a map what this is referring to. So Jesus is in Judea, the southern part, and he's on his way north to Galilee up here. And we need a little bit of context here because most Jews actually avoided this area in the middle called Samaria. And the reason for that is because like centuries before this, the Assyrians, this empire comes in and conquers Israel at the time. And one of the things that the Assyrians did when they invaded was they exiled a whole bunch of Jews, a lot of them living in this area. And now not all of them were exiled, but they spread them out in lots of different places in the broader Assyrian Empire. And then they brought in people from these other countries to kind of live and settle in this area. And so in particular, a lot of the Assyrians lived and set up shop in what was now called, at this point, Samaria. I mean, Empire Building 101 states that the best way to control people is to slowly erode their identity. That over time, they just kind of conform or just absorb into the new culture without even realizing it. So the Assyrians come in, they're living here. According to their plan, over time, they begin to intermarry with some of the remaining Jews in that area. And before long, there were no pure Jews living in that place. I mean, they had all been married to these people from other countries, and they became a combination of races known in the first century as Samaritans. Now, the Jews living down here in Judea and also up here in Galilee, they found this totally unacceptable. I mean, to them, they thought the Jews who stayed in Samaria, that it would have been better if they had taken their own lives rather than like intermarry with these evil foreigners all those centuries ago. I kind of suspect that they hated the Samaritans in part because they knew deep down, had it been them, they would have done the exact same thing. But anyway, the Jews refused to have anything to do with the Samaritans. So much so, when they were traveling from the south in Judea to Galilee, instead of going straight through, they went to the east and took the long way around to avoid any contact with these people. That would be like driving around Kentucky to get to Tennessee. I mean, that's like a new level of contempt. Now, I say all that because John, after he mentions this, gives an interesting detail in verse 4. He says, now, he had to go through Samaria. I mean, the truth is, Jesus did not have to go through Samaria. He could have simply gone around Samaria like everyone else did in his day. But it's almost as if John, looking back, thinking about what happens in the story, he realizes something about Jesus, that Jesus is not taking the normal route on purpose, that Jesus is going, I've got to go through Samaria. Verse 5, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. That's a really important detail. Verse 7, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. Now, without even knowing this woman's story, this is like it's supposed to be already surprising. I mean, you can picture this. As this woman is leaving her village, Sychar, where she lives, as she begins to make her way out to Jacob's well, carrying this large, heavy water jug. At noon, by the way, John tells us, when she could be sure that none of the other townswomen would be there because they came early in the morning or in the evening when it was cooler. Not at noon, the hottest part of the day. And they normally went to the well in groups to socialize and also for protection. So already there are hints that this woman is in like a bad place, that something is not quite right. She's coming to the well at high noon when no one else would be there, and she comes to the well alone. And as she looks at that well in the distance, she sees this group of Jewish men there. And she thinks to herself, why are Jewish men in a place like this? Why are they passing through Samaria? And as she got closer, she crossed paths with these disciples who were on their way into Sychar, the town that she just left. And you can be sure there was absolutely no eye contact. No conversation, because she was a woman. Even worse than that, she was a Samaritan woman. These are Jewish men. And yet, as they passed and the dust kind of settled, she looked to the well. And there, sitting on like the edge of the well, was this one lone figure. She has no idea that she is moments away from a one-on-one conversation with the Messiah, the Lord, the true King. And so the woman walks up to Jesus, and again, no eye contact. She's thinking, why is this man here? Jesus breaks the silence. He looks at her in the eye, and he says, will you give me something to drink from your jar? It's funny, she never says yes. She never says no. She's just like taken aback. Like, why is he even talking to me, let alone making this request? I mean, a Jew asking permission to drink after me, to touch what I have touched, to put his lips where I have put my lips. I mean, this is just so bizarre. I mean, you realize, of course, Jesus isn't so much asking something of her as he is making a statement about how he views her. He's saying, I view you as someone who's worthy to drink after. I view you as someone who I'm not afraid to touch or embrace. You are not someone I would go out of my way to avoid. In fact, I've gone out of my way to have this conversation with you. Will you give me something to drink? Verse 9, the Samaritan woman said to him, and again, you'd think she'd say, well, yes, I can, or no, I can't. But she ignores the request. She says, you are a Jew, right? I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? And now John wants to make sure that we understand this context that we just kind of walked through. And so John adds this parenthetical, for Jews do not associate with Samaritans, which is a huge understatement. In other words, she says, I'm a Samaritan. I know the way that you Jews think. According to you, there's like you guys, and then there's like Samaritans, and then below that are Samaritan women. And again, why would you have this conversation with me? Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Notice he says, given. Not traded, not demanded, not bartered, not required. He would have given. Now, here's what I kind of think happened. I think sometimes we read these stories and we sort of flatten them a bit. I think at this point in the conversation, I think she stared at Jesus and I think she knew he had something to offer her other than just more water. I think she's aware of this. I've heard this story, I've heard this sermon many, many times, and a lot of the times they make this woman seem like basically an idiot, right? Like, oh, living water, that's impossible. I think she knows something is going on because he spoke to her. He treated her like a person. She knew he was offering her something. And I think she looked at him, and I think she paused. And then I think she kind of like pulled herself together and said, Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? In other words, she knows there's something going on besides water. I mean, she's still not answered his question. She still hasn't said, yes, I can, or no, I won't. I mean, she's shocked they're even having the conversation, but she realizes he's making a claim. She knows that he's offering her something better than she came to the well to get for herself. She knows that this well, this water, was given to her people by Jacob himself. That's like big time, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I mean, this is Jacob's well. Are you telling me, she says, that you have something to offer better than this well given by Jacob? And you're offering to give me something. He's given us something. And so there's confusion. There's obviously more to this conversation than she understands. And yet, she's not exactly sure what it is Jesus offers. Just like maybe some of us aren't sure what Jesus is offering. Like, what do you mean by living water? And what's involved with that? Look at verse 13. Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. Well, she knew that. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Now, okay, it's like you here today. It's like me today. I know there's something to this. I know I hear this, and I'm supposed to go, yeah, but I don't quite grasp or understand it. I know there's something. I know there's more to what you're saying. And by the way, as we understand the rest of the Gospel of John, what he's offering her when he says eternal life, he actually defines it later in John 17. Jesus says that eternal life is that you would know the one true God and Jesus whom God has sent. I mean, that's what eternal life is. A relationship with God, a relationship with the Father through the Son. He says to her, if only you knew who I was. If only you understood what it was I was offering. Granted, I haven't made that entirely clear yet, but you would ask for it, and I would give it. And it would quench a thirst that you yourself haven't even been able to pin down what that even is. It would quench something beyond physical thirst. It would quench something in you that you have been trying to satisfy your whole life. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty." I think once again, she's kind of trying to put this together, and I think she snaps back into reality. Give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. And then this is like the strangest thing. Jesus does the most insensitive thing imaginable. I'm telling you, I would never have the audacity to do this. I mean, suddenly, Jesus, who, he's got her sort of leaning in. He has her moving his way. He's drawing her in, and they're talking about like this metaphor, and they're kind of this judo, talking about some deeper things. And this woman is going, I don't know what the living water is. I don't know what eternal life is, but there's something about this guy. You know what? Every other man that I've entrusted myself to has abused me, has used me. But I'm going to trust this guy. If you have something to give it to me. And just when she's beginning to open herself up to Jesus, look at verse 16. He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." Now, try to stay in this story, especially if you know what happens. We're about to find out that Jesus goes right for her open wound. He goes right to the thing that she doesn't want to think about, and all the pain and memories, and she's tried years and years to forget about. Verse 17, "I have no husband," she replied. And then I think she busies herself. I think she goes right back to drawing water from the well. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." So now we find out this is not just a Samaritan woman. This is a woman with a past. I mean, she's been married not 1 time, not 2 times, but 5 times. I mean, that would be unusual for our culture. I mean, this is absolutely shocking in the first century, to say the least. Now, we don't know why she's had 5 husbands. Maybe she's been unable to have children and they've all divorced her. Perhaps all of her husbands have died. But even if it's that, if she marries one, he dies. She marries another, he dies, and on and on. I mean, from the point of view of people in that culture, they would have surely viewed this woman as someone who was cursed by God. I mean, even for us, we're not superstitious, and there's a point where you kind of go, whoa, I think this woman is bad luck. The point is, we don't know if she went through 5 husbands because of decisions she made or 5 husbands because of decisions other people made. As if that's not bad enough. Not only has she been married 5 times, she's now living with someone who's not her husband, which means only one thing in this culture, that guy has no intention whatsoever of marrying her. She has a past. It's also a very public past. I mean, she lives in what would be a very, very small town, one of those places where everybody knows everybody and everybody's business. I mean, the woman is in a really bad place. To pick up on the metaphor in the story, I mean, she's thirsty. Yes, physically thirsty, but there's a thirst that goes way beyond that. She's desperate for dignity. I mean, life has kind of left her in that place. She's come to the well alone, meaning she's desperate for friends, for connection, for unconditional love. And she has this thirst that she has tried everything in her power to fulfill, and nothing. It could never be satisfied. And 5 husbands later and 1 lover later, she still has not found what she's looking for. See, I don't know what you believe about God. I don't know the kind of church you were raised in, if any, or your views about God, in particular, how God views you. But if you and I, if we could enter into this story, I mean, we're about to get a major insight into how God views us, into how God views thirsty, broken, desperate people. Because here's this man, Jesus, sitting in this dusty place in the middle of Samaria, this Jesus who goes, I've got to go through Samaria, seemingly waiting on her to arrive. And Jesus seems to have something different to offer this woman, but he gets a little bit too close. Now, notice he doesn't shame her, he doesn't condemn her, he doesn't point fingers. He simply says, without judgment, yes, what you have just said is quite true. You have some wounds. He kind of goes deeper. You have some baggage, some regrets. You can almost feel the woman kind of put her guard back up like, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, she knows, everybody knows. And here Jesus is dredging up all this stuff that she has like 100 excuses for. I mean, she has reasons why she was right and all the other guys were wrong, and just like why would you ask me that question? But if we're honest, I think we're really not so different from this woman, are we? I mean, some of us today, and this would require a lot of honesty, would say, you know what, I'm kind of like this woman. Like life has left me thirsty, in need, broken. I'm thirsty partly because of decisions that I've made, partly because of decisions other people have made. But like life for me, it hasn't gone the way that I thought. My dreams have not like all come true. I mean, some of it perhaps has to do with choices, with mistakes, with things I'd rather forget about. Some of it perhaps has to do with choices other people have made, and now I have like the pain or the outcomes that I am powerless to change. I mean, this really is not something that we think about often. I mean, it only strikes us once in a while when we're quiet and still enough to hear it. Even then, we just kind of busy ourselves a lot of times with other things. We quickly dismiss it. This uneasy feeling that there is something missing from my life. Sometimes this comes on the heels of disappointment. Other times it shows up after our success, after we've gotten the thing we're going after, and there's a bit of a letdown sometimes, like, that's it? Like, I thought I would feel different. I thought it would be more fulfilling than this. I think Jesus is saying to you and to me, hold on to that need, that tension. Don't dismiss that too quickly, because there's something there if you have the courage to sort of lean into that, to face that head on. And so maybe some of us have the courage to admit, there is a thirst that I have tried to quench over and over through lots of different things, many of them good things. But life has left me feeling unsatisfied. I've been unable to satisfy that thirst. And here's the good news, like the woman in this story, Jesus goes out of his way to seek you out. Not the person around you in front of you, but you. And he says to you and to me without judgment, without condemnation, I have the ability through a relationship with me to satisfy that thirst, to give you that peace and that fulfillment that you have been looking for all of your life and been unable to find. But it comes through these quiet moments when we realize or we admit deep down that we're not as satisfied, we're not as fulfilled as we pretend. I got to tell you though, that is a scary and often uncomfortable thing to admit, even to ourselves. And so mentally, we change the subject. I mean, heaven forbid that someone else come along and they say, like they challenge this sacred idea that we have, that we alone have everything that we need. We are fine on our own. Thank you very much. And how dare you imply that what I am doing in my own energy, with my own resources, that there's something I might be missing. It's why, and maybe this is you, it's why maybe sometimes you come to church and there's this thought that you're missing something and you're not sure what it is. Maybe church is the answer. I don't know. I've tried everything else. I'll try this. It's why you come to church like 2 or 3 times and then maybe you don't come back for a few weeks, You need to give yourself a break. Like, I'm fine. I've got this. Or why maybe you've had the moment where we're singing and there's a line or a lyric in a song that hits you and you sort of feel something, some emotion rise up that you weren't expecting, and you kind of instinctively put the defenses up. Like, man, what is the matter with me? Like, I might be losing it. let me tell you what that's about. Because what Jesus does with this woman in this moment is what he wants to do with you. Jesus suddenly, abruptly, painfully, and a little bit insensitively, he puts this woman in touch with her thirst. I mean, this is his way of saying, come on, I know life has left you wanting more. Decisions that you have made have left you unsatisfied. Decisions other people have made have left you wanting more. Isn't that true? Jesus says, I'm about to give you living water. The only condition is that you own up to the fact that your attempts to quench your own thirst have not worked. In fact, they've left you in need, unfulfilled, anxious, lonely, ashamed. Now, notice what Jesus doesn't say, and this is huge. He doesn't call her a sinner. He doesn't condemn her in any way. He doesn't say, how dare you, it serves you right, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're the one who got you into this mess. Now, she kind of jumps to some conclusions based on her own experience. I mean, here we go. I know where this is going. I've heard this before from, everybody. I know what you think about me, so come on, judge me. Here it comes. But all Jesus does is shine a bright light on her need, on her inability to find fulfillment and peace she's been looking for her whole life. And she's uncomfortable. And so suddenly, she changes the subject to something safe. Look at verse 19. Sir, the woman said, I can see you are a prophet. That's a good insight. I perceive you're a prophet. Now, let's change the subject. And look what she does. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Blah, 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 right? Jesus reads this woman's mail, basically, and her panicked response, and I get it, I got to protect myself, is to immediately divert attention and begin talking about some controversial theological topic. Let's talk about the difference between Jews and Samaritans. I don't want to talk about the past. That's way too personal. I don't like the way that makes me feel. Besides, if you give me enough time, I can explain every one of those relationships and why I did what I did, but I don't want to talk about it anymore. And Jesus goes with it. Jesus indulges her. He lets her change the subject. They actually have a long talk about theology. And they talk about Jews, and they talk about Samaritans, and they talk about worship, and on, and she's starting to feel really safe, like, whew. And then she says, as she's finishing gathering her water, she's about to leave. Look at verse 25. This is summary statement, end of conversation. Church is over. I'm going home, and I'm not coming back for a long time because that got way too close. She says, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Bye. That got a little too close. So I know when Messiah comes, Messiah will teach us, he'll clarify, but for now, gotta go, gotta run, bye, see you later, maybe next time, I'm out. And Jesus looks at her right in the eye and says, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. And she sat down her water jar. And she just looked at him. And she knew he was telling the truth. I mean, all of a sudden, she got really, really in touch with her need. All of a sudden, she stopped pretending that what she was doing was working. And in that moment, she embraces the reality of who Jesus was, what he was offering. And as they're locked in this intense moment, suddenly they realize the other people are around them, and they snap out of it. Verse 27, just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with the woman. But no one asked, what do you want? Or why are you talking with her? I mean, they could tell something's going on. If you've ever walked into a conversation and you're just about to open your mouth and say something trivial and you realize, oh, this is serious. So that. Verse 28, then, look at this, leaving her water jar. In other words, leaving behind the thing that symbolized her ongoing thirst. It's a really important detail. Leaving her water jar behind. the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did." At which point, I think they burst out laughing. Like, everybody knows everything that you did. Like, listen, honey, it doesn't take a prophet, okay? It doesn't take a Messiah. Look around. Everybody knows. But listen, there was something about the way she said it. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? There was something about her transparency or her expression. There was something about her desperation or in her eyes. No more excuses. No more shame, no more hiding, no more defending. I want you to know I'm coming clean. I know you know everything about what I've done. I know everything about what I've done. And I'm telling you, I just met a guy who knows everything. Could this be the Messiah? And again, something had changed, something about her countenance, her expression, her openness, that the people who despised her for who she was took a chance. They gathered themselves together, verse 30, they came out of the town and made their way toward him. And then look at verse 39. This is how the whole story ends. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. And it's impossible for me to kind of explain the transformation that takes place in that moment. I mean, this woman goes from trying to protect herself and stalling tactics and smoke screens and changing the subject and all these things to this point where she can now say, he told me everything I ever did. Without a trace of defensiveness, no making excuses, no hint of how dare he or who do you think you are. He told me everything I ever did. And she sees herself in a whole new light, I would argue, from God's perspective, as a result of her encounter with Jesus. And there's now no fear, there's no more shame. She has been set free. And so maybe there are those of us here who would say, yeah, I'm a little bit like this woman. I have spent years, maybe even decades, looking for meaning, looking for fulfillment. And I've tried some relationships. I've gone after some experiences. I've tried accomplishing stuff. Maybe I need a little more relationship in that category, maybe a little bit more in the experience category. And if you're honest, you'd say it hasn't worked. I mean, not only that, but for a lot of us, looking back, our biggest regrets are in areas where we kind of took things in our own hands and we tried to carve out meaning because we are going to satisfy our thirst on our own if it kills us. And we have relational pain. We have like a trail of bad decisions. Not only did it not work, it actually made your life way more complicated. And even where you managed to accomplish your goal, you made it, you got there, finally. Then you have this disturbing realization that it has not delivered what you thought it would. So I just want to suggest humbly to you that before you go even one more round of, that didn't work, but I'm sure this one will. I just need a little more relationship. I just need a little more experience, a little more achievement, and next time, and I just need a little more time, and I got this. You've done that already. It hasn't worked. Can I suggest to you that Jesus is offering you right now the life that you have been searching for, that he and he alone has the peace you have been unable to find. But for that to happen, it means that we have to come to a place where we can admit that we're searching, that we're thirsty, that we're unsatisfied, and frankly, exhausted from the effort. That's really the first step, admitting that. In many ways, it's the only step. And I know this is touchy, and it's easy to get defensive, and it's easy to change the subject, and let's talk about some controversial theological thing. This is way, way more personal than that. We can only receive the life of Jesus to the degree that we can admit and are in touch with our need. In spite of how others see us, in spite of our success, in spite of all these things. The only people who can't receive grace are those who can't admit that they need it. And so it starts with admitting, you're right. I've had it all. I've not had it all. I've lost it. I'm trying to get it all. But where I am right now, life has left me thirsty. Because if you're willing to acknowledge that, you're finally in a position for God to do something in your life. And his posture is just like Jesus in this story. He comes to us and he says, I know. What you have said, if you're honest, is true. In fact, I know everything you've ever done. I know your heart. I know your struggles, your pain, your shame, your fear. But I have gone out of my way to meet with you now. Like right now. No judgment, no condemnation. I am here to bring peace and life and hope and freedom. All you have to do is come to me to admit that what you're doing isn't working and to be open to receiving the life that I have. Would you pray with me? Lord, what we're talking about is actually good news. That's why it's called good news. Father, would you give us the courage to be honest about where we are, ways that we've been trying to find meaning and fulfillment and to satisfy our thirst, and we go round and round. Lord, give us the grace to realize sooner rather than later that it's not only is it not working, it's not going to work. Give us the courage to come to you and to admit our need. Give us the faith to believe that just maybe, if we open ourselves to you, that you do have living water, that you do want to satisfy that thirst. Meet us where we are with your tangible peace and your tangible presence. May we be changed. In your name. Amen. Well, again, thank you for being here. I do want to leave you with one final announcement, and I'll kind of spare some details, but long story short, we have a handful of people getting baptized this coming Tuesday at 5:30 at Marl's Meadow over in Yorktown by the canoe launch. And so we've got, at this point, 2 adults and a couple of teenagers, and just some neat stories on the ways that God has been stirring people even in this time. And they are ready to get baptized. They're ready to say, I'm in. I want to follow Jesus. I want this living water that he's made available to me. And so I mention that for 2 reasons. One, if you'd like to join us, we'd certainly love to have you. We're going to social distance and wear masks and all that. But again, this Tuesday, 5:30 at Marl's Meadow. And secondly, perhaps there's someone listening or watching who wants to take that step, is ready to go public with your faith and to say, I want to declare with this symbol an outward declaration of a new inward association. I'm following him. He's King. He's Lord of my life. And so if that's you, just want to extend that invitation. Please reach out to me. You can do that by emailing matt@commonwaychurch.com. Again, matt@commonwaychurch.com. And I'd love to talk with you more or get you details for that. Have a great week. Go in peace, and we'll see you hopefully next week.